Hello, everybody, and welcome to the most recent episode of Bad Movie Reviews. Can't remember what episode it is, but hosted by myself, Ben, and Daniel. You can, of course, join us every week on all major podcasting platforms and visually on YouTube.
I'm proud of you.
I guess, sorry?
I said I'm proud of you.
Proud of me? Yeah,
got that one right.
Didn't say major platforming podcasts this time. We'll get straight into movie news. There's probably not a huge amount. First of all, I want to acknowledge last week we did say we'd cover Jeepers Creepers Reborn, but I think it showed in cinemas for like 2 days, and it was literally, I looked it up and it was like a fan event. 2 days, that's all it's showing, and we didn't really have enough time to actually see it, but from what I've heard, it is possibly one of the worst films I've ever heard, so glad we didn't. So we are covering, I managed to see Fall. Daniel didn't manage to sort of have time to get that, so I'll quickly cover that off, where we're going to give our impressions on Andor, and we were lucky enough to see the Avatar re-release, which we will touch on purely just because we've obviously got the new one coming out, so we get a bit of touch on that. But get straight into news. There's not a huge amount. A new Cloverfield film is in the works. So after Paramount have seen the success of not reboots, but Top Gun this year. Obviously, 10 Cloverfield Lane was looked upon quite well, which I thought was a good movie. New one in the works, directed by a guy named Babak Anvari, which I looked up, and he's directed nothing of any notable, no film that I know anyway. Yeah, okay. So if I don't know it, I presume you probably have no idea.
No idea. He sounds like a character of Star Wars.
It actually does, Babak Anvari. What are your thoughts on that? A new Cloverfield film? I don't know if you like them or you've actually ever seen
10 Cloverfield Lane, is it?
That was the one where it was kind of connected, but it was like not really, if that makes sense. Like it was just the end, it happened at the same time as the Cloverfield film.
I did see this news come out actually, and I thought it was wasn't there a Cloverfield paradox or something like that, or?
Yeah, there was another one on straight to Netflix, which I never saw. Apparently, it wasn't great.
That's the one I saw that was not great.
Yeah, apparently. But this one's like Paramount, director. But it's interesting because the Cloverfield Lane was quite good at the time. Cloverfield, the original, was obviously quite new at the time because it was like the first, or like one of the, obviously apart from Blair Witch Project, it was like, all handy cam, like found footage. But then 10 Cloverfield Lane was literally just about a guy who kind of held a woman captive, and it happened at the same time. So it was like within the same universe.
Okay. Yeah.
So who knows if it's directly, connected to the Cloverfield, or whether it's just some side movie. But I don't necessarily have the most excitement for it, considering I've never heard of the director, so I don't know if he's any good.
That's fair.
This is another one I don't know if you've seen. I've seen a few of them. A new Final Destination movie has been announced.
I have seen them all, and
they're guilty pleasures. I don't hate them, but they're like enjoyable.
It's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it's the directors attached. They've announced Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, which I've not noticed anything they've directed either, apart from the Kim Possible live action movie, mate.
Oh, it was great. I watched that like 6 times.
Okay, we might just cut the podcast there and cut all funding. And
just got it.
No, I've never heard the interesting thing. They apparently weren't actually contacted to. I read the article a little bit. This might not be 100% correct, but they apparently weren't like confronted or like approached to direct it. Apparently, they did a pitch of the movie on Zoom, and apparently they connected and then like recorded edited and pre-recorded video of them. Apparently, like, a fire started, and then they went to put out the fire, and the fan like fell on one of the directors and decapitated them in the pitch.
That's cool.
So apparently they went like full,
out.
funny, and then like
like that.
Yeah. So I don't. When I saw that, I'm like, that's kind of cool. But similar thing, being that I do not know the directors, it's hard to say, because not to say obviously if you have a well-known director, it's going to be a good movie, but usually you kind of know if they've directed this film before. Yeah. You kind of know, their talent there, but I'm all for, new directors starting, and I think a Final Destination is probably a good film to start, because you can just kind of have fun with it.
Correct. I don't know if you can make any mistakes at all, because you can't. There's no way you're going to make a great movie, but you can make something very enjoyable quite easily, I reckon. Just real gory, real messed up. Good fun.
Correct. Now, this film actually, it's not so much news. It's just kind of an interesting thing to talk about. We've talked about it a bit before. Don't Worry, Darling has come out in the States, which is the Harry Styles, Florence Pugh movie. Come out in the States, and they preemptively thought that their predictions were it would make like 15 million and ended up making 20. But I presume that's mostly because of Harry Styles or the pre-release, like all the drama that led up to it.
Yeah, okay.
There was all the talk about, Harry Styles potentially spitting on Chris Pine at the premiere and like obviously, but it's reviewed really poorly. It doesn't come out here till October, but there an insider who worked on the movie has actually come out and said that essentially the drama that began was Florence Pugh and like Olivia Wilde got in a full screaming match in the middle of set because towards the end of filming, towards the last third of the filming, apparently like Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles just kept disappearing from set. Which, if you don't know, they're dating. Well, I mean, I don't know if they actually are dating anymore, but they started dating because she had an affair with him while married with Jason Sudeikis, who plays, Ted Lasso and I think but I've never heard of a film have more drama on a set, and it's obviously worked well for them. It's obviously started all this pre-buzz and it's made money, but we'll see that soon enough. It's just obviously something to touch on when the film news sort of is a bit dire, but this is probably the one that actually gets the most talked about, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. It's kind of a rumor, but I see it happening. Apparently Disney are potentially pulling Black Panther from French cinemas. So apparently they're pulling it slated from the French cinemas, and the reason being is there's actually a French law that requires a film to, after a film releases in cinema, they need to wait 17 months before releasing it on a subscription-based service. So they're potentially going to just completely cut releasing Black Panther from French cinemas because
so they
won't be able to release it on Disney Plus because I think they wait like 45 days usually or something like after it's. So I didn't know they had a law like that, and I actually find that interesting because, to be honest, it sounds like it's probably a good law to have in terms of obviously getting people to the cinemas because we live in Australia obviously, and I know a lot of people who would sit there and be like, there's no point going to the film, you cinema, you pay $40 when you can wait 2 months to watch it on streaming, which I don't mind watching a movie on television, but it's also nowhere near as good as seeing in a cinema, and I will touch on that later when we review probably the best film of all time in fall. Kidding, obviously Avatar, but what are your thoughts on that in terms of obviously the fact that they might just pull it from a cinema? Because I think studios almost have too much power nowadays now that they've got their own subscription base. It's kind of like a monopoly, like Disney own everything. And
yeah, look, I'm not sure. The law is very interesting, and I think it's good to keep people going to cinema because I think the entertainment industry pumps a lot of money into the economy. And I think...
Yeah, oh, God, yeah. I mean, you see it every year when we had, like through COVID, when we did quite well, obviously, compared to other places. The Vic government were putting $30 million into making Thor, and then it brings hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And
yeah. I'm not... Yeah, I don't know. I like the law. Yeah, I'm all for it.
I reckon we should bring it in because, it really prevents studios from having all that power. Really?
Yeah, and the subscription-based service really does wreck it because you're 100% correct. There's so many people that are like, I'll just wait the 45 days. It's not really that exciting. I'll just watch it at home in my home theatre.
Yeah.
It's different when they used to take 6 months to go to DVD or anything like that. But now everything just gets released instantly.
Even then, you obviously buy your DVD, and it's interesting because we've talked about this before where studios have, obviously Warner Bros. Have completely written off certain things and cut them from streaming as tax write-off. It's actually recently happened today. This is more TV news. Me and you have watched this show and I love it. Final Space.
Oh, love Final Space.
Today it was completely cut. They've deleted it from all streaming platforms for tax write-off.
Wow.
So that's what I mean. Studios almost these streaming, as soon as you buy something in physical media, you have that. And I've always said that. I've got a huge Blu-ray collection.
One of my favourite shows.
It's a great animated show. I thoroughly enjoy it. But I do find it interesting. I think that laws need to come into play because studios are having a lot more power. Realistically, if you think about it, Disney have, I think, 20 of the 30 highest grossing films, and they're still current IPs for them. And it's on top of that, they've obviously got their own streaming service. They're potentially not even going to allow people in France to go see their film in cinema.
Yeah,
It's just because of a law.
It's outrageous.
It is pretty outrageous. It's something to get talking about. But other than that, it's kind of all we have for news. It's a pretty dire, quiet week in terms of movies as well. But I guess I might quickly, before we probably, obviously, we'll chat a fair bit about Avatar and Andor, but I might quickly talk about Fall for 2 minutes because there's probably not much to talk about. For any of you who don't know, it's about a girl named Becky, and she's a bit of a free climber, and her boyfriend dies in a climb, and that's not spoilers, it's in the trailer, as you know.
Yeah.
So essentially gets scared, and one of her friends goes, let's climb this fucking B17 tower or something, which is like the 5th highest thing in the thing. But look, it was a movie. I think it's one of those films that like you could enjoy watching for an hour and 45, and your time's kind of like, it was all right kind of thing. It was well acted from the main actress Becky and her father, but the supporting actress, the blonde girl, is possibly it's a really bad performance, I'll be honest. And it's I did not like her character one bit. To give you a bit of context, it's like, her boyfriend died, and it's like the old you would do it. The old you would climb this tower, even though she's obviously dealing with extreme anxiety and PTSD from climbing anything. A crap friend.
Yeah.
Didn't like the character at all, but they did do what they were trying to do, really. Like, it was quite suspenseful. I went with a friend of mine who hates heights, and it is like, you kind of do feel vertigo at times with some of the shots, but at times some of the CGI is really
Poor.
And especially the editing and the cutting, like at the start, there's like 15 cuts in 2 seconds, and it's like you can't really focus on what's actually happening. But the main bit is when they're actually climbing the tower, you've got close-up shots of like nails falling out of the ladder, and it's like the shaking, and you hear the wind, and it's kind of a bit unsettling. But and I must admit, the story beats, they were not exactly what I was expecting at all. Like, going into the film, it took me by surprise, which didn't make me hate the film, but it wasn't like Orphan Kills where there's like a plot twist and I'm like, oh, that actually, kind of made the film a little bit.
Yeah.
This bit that happened, I was like, it kind of, these few things happen, and it wasn't exactly surprising, and then it just kind of ended. But probably a film to wait 45 days for streaming, but if you're in France, you might not be able to. But
Worth the budget though, wasn't the budget
3 million?
$3 million
bucks. They'll make their money back for sure, and that's the thing. Like, these studios are probably, especially after COVID, they're probably trying to make these safe plays and make these small budget movies where it was sold out where I was.
Oh, good.
Like, we tried to go to a local cinema and it was fully sold out. We ended up going to a different one, still close, but it was also sold out. So I'm sure it'll make its money back. I don't know how. I don't know where else it's released. I went to an advanced screening, but look, it was decent enough to enjoy if you've got nothing to do on some night. You could pay your $20 and go. Otherwise, I don't think it's necessarily something to go rush out to see, but it did its job. It was suspenseful. It was like nail biting at times, but I just can't necessarily sit here and be like, yeah, it was a great story. It was just, to me, kind of a waste of time, but it was like, I enjoyed the waste of time, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
Other than that, that's obviously all I've got to talk on for that. So I might take a quick break because we'll probably chat about these two things in a bit of depth. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back at our impressions on the first 3 episodes of Andor, I think it was, and the Avatar re-release. Easy. So we'll jump into, we'll jump into Andor first, before obviously chatting about our thoughts on the Avatar re-release. I know you've obviously, it's a bit probably more fresh in your mind, so and I've just chatted for about 5 minutes on Fall, so I don't know if you want to get your thoughts out the way.
Look, Andor, loved it. I think we kind of spoke about it a little bit this morning after, obviously, I freshly watched it. It is some of the best Star Wars material they've released in years. I think it definitely beats the latest 3 movies that came out for sure. Not that was too hard, but I thought it was very well written, well acted. I thought the cast was good. I thought all the characters, there was enough backstory there in the short period of time to build that universe. That was kind of felt brand new. It didn't feel like it was still Star Wars, but it felt new. It didn't feel like it was recycled material or sets, or because you know how like Mandalorian was very
It's the only
similar.
thing not on Tatooine, really.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of Star Wars, and it's kind of more obviously on the surface of real characters rather than obviously these Jedi's or Siths. It's more about some obviously.
Yeah, look, I thought it was fantastic. I enjoyed it all. I thought the a lot of the cinematography and the audio was fantastic throughout it. Look, I've got not much to say other than I think it's nearly worth merging it all together by the end. Early call. I'd love to see a movie out of it. I think they built such a good 3 episodes there that I would have watched that as a movie. And I think
The hard thing is they've obviously made it in mind of a TV show. So you might have your 10 episodes, which are technically might be 4 to 6 hours, depending on the length.
Yeah.
So that's the hard bit. Obviously, it's a character from Rogue One as well, so you kind of obviously know where
I had very low expectations.
where it ends. 'Cause
Yeah.
you kind of know where it obviously ends with Rogue One, being that he's one of the main characters. But you had low expectations for the show or
the show, just because I feel like
the last few things hasn't been.
the last most of years haven't really hit the mark, and I thought like Mandalorian was cool, but Grogu was really just kind of what made it cool. The rest of like every other series that's come out there has been kind of donuts. I haven't watched heaps of like Clone Wars or any of the like Bad Batch. I hear they're pretty good, but
Clone Wars was good, but that was obviously more pre. They've only done one season since under Disney, so it was more sort of pre.
yeah.
That was more Lucasfilm at the time when it was mid 2000s. I
Look,
think.
yeah, loved it. Worth a watch, 100%. What do you think of the film?
Yeah, film.
Film. It felt like a film.
It felt like a film.
Yeah, 'cause it's so well made.
That's one thing I wanted to chat about is, I wasn't the biggest. I don't think we ever touched on it because it was before we actually started the pod. But I wasn't the biggest fan of ObiWan, just because it kind of took away from the original trilogy. If you really look into
A lot of things.
a lot of things. And it was very fan servicey. I enjoy The Mandalorian, but I also felt like as soon as Grogu was introduced, it was really playing into that fan service thing as well, really. Obviously a Baby Yoda kind of thing. And this is just completely opposite. You can tell they're really focused on storytelling rather than fan service. I think that also obviously plays into the account. You've got a character who's been in one film, which wasn't actually connected to obviously the main 9, really. And I really like, I think his name's Diego Luna, the actor for Andor. I think he's a great actor, and I really like all the characters. But the main thing is it's very mature, and it's like not gritty in a way, but it's like darker, and it's more so on the ground with like, when it's showing under the Imperial kind of rule, and
Yeah, it's
like really kind of
a lot more realism.
a lot more realistic, and it's got fantastic set design as well, and you can tell that they've actually made everything almost practical. Like all the sets are real, and you can really kind of tell, and it's also incredibly layered. So I mean, obviously we're going off 3 episodes. For all we know, it might have turned to absolute shit, but from all reports within Disney, they were happy with this. And it's interesting, obviously, as we talked about, I think last week, within the news, that they kind of have really emptied out their slate of all Star Wars content, films, TV shows. I don't even know, like The Mandalorian new season's coming out. I know they showed that at D23, but and the other one, Book of Boba Fett, I was not a fan of whatsoever. So that was kind of shit. But no, I'm all for this. I thought it. One thing that you said as well, the sound design, I thought was fantastic,
Yeah.
and that's one thing that's always, I guess, been good in Star Wars. But this one specifically, like the way it's set, I thought really, really showed. But within, an hour and a half almost, I think they were 35, 40 minutes each, it really gave the characters backstory, and you already start to care about a lot of them, especially Aunt Petunia, like what's it from Harry Potter? The woman from the shows in Harry Potter. It's Harry Potter's aunt with the robot.
Aunt Petunia.
Aunt Petunia, is that her name, Aunt Petunia?
Is that her?
Yeah, that's her.
Where were you?
The one who I won't spoil it. The one who's with the robot. Yeah.
That's Aunt Petunia.
Yeah.
Oh, she lost
Same
some weight.
actress.
She looks good.
The one who is with Uncle Vernon, I think. Is it Aunt Petunia? Is that the name?
Oh no, Aunt Petunia's the
the
fat
one he
lady
blows
who
up.
blows up.
Fuck, what's the name then?
God.
You know who I'm talking about now.
Yeah,
The
I can't remember. Does she ever get a proper mention?
that woman, Petunia.
Yeah.
It is
Oh, it is
Petunia. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, Marjorie is the large
Marjorie.
one. Yeah, that's her. I was right. Fuck, I thought I was
was
going
right.
mental. You were right. You were wrong.
I was right and wrong.
You're right and wrong. But I'm all for it, and I recommend everyone, if you're obviously a Star Wars fan, I think that's the main thing. But I also think that this is a show that you could actually also watch if you're not, because it's actually, I mean, you probably have to be a little bit into sci-fi, I guess, in a way. But even then, it's more. This is what I mean. It's very story driven. So I think anyone could get into it. But other than that, we probably won't really, similar to House of Dragons and Rings of Power, we probably won't really touch on it too much until the end of the season, and we can obviously review it as a whole piece of content. So, but based off the first 3 episodes, I think it's great and definitely worth a watch. But we won't sort of touch on it too much more because we'll get into the Avatar re-release. For anyone who doesn't obviously know, it's one of the biggest films of all time. They've re-released it for a weekend in cinemas, obviously in anticipation of the new one coming out, and it was actually slightly altered, I've read, but it has been like remastered into 4K, so obviously it's a little bit better. But we were lucky enough to see it in IMAX 3D, and I'll let you. I know you
already know the words are about to come out of my mouth.
Twiddling.
Oh, it was fantastic. It's got to be, look, definitely a personal opinion, but it's got to be one of the greatest movies ever. I've seen it. I'm not even kidding. This would be an accurate number, probably 100 times, and I still loved it. The fact that I know it was upscaled, but the fact that it's a 14, 15-year-old film or whatever it is.
13, I think. 2009?
Yeah,
2009. Yeah, 13 years old.
So 13-year-old film, and it looks better than nearly anything that's come out since that movie. And we spoke about it a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a reflection on the movies that have come out recently or just the fact that James Cameron's Avatar was just that phenomenal and that ahead of where it was, that it was just...
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, it's so vibrant. Like, movies these days, so dark, so...
Grey and like... But they always have like a greeny, bluey tinge and grey, like all the blockbusters, really.
Yeah. But this one was like very cool and then very bright and very vibrant, and it's just a fantastic film. I loved every single aspect of it, and I will continue to love every single aspect of it. I didn't expect to still feel like some kind of emotional connection to certain characters even after seeing it for the 100th time, and I still did. It was just so well made, and I'm so keen for the next. It's already my movie of the year, and I haven't watched it, so...
You're forgetting there's, Everything Everywhere All at Once and Top Gun Maverick and Batman.
Originally I was going to decide on, a top 10, and there was only...
we'll need Batman to. At the end of the year,
Batman was going to be first, and then I'll keep adding movies to number 1. So
it is a good year for film, I'll tell you that much.
There's been some absolute donuts this year. I reckon there's only been either or. I reckon we've only had absolute donuts or fantastic films. There's not
I've
many
seen
in
some
between.
films that are like, yeah, it's all right. But
what did you think? I loved it.
It's such like a special movie in terms of filmmaking, in terms of blockbusters. There's really nothing that actually comes close, and I think James Cameron is genuinely the king of blockbusters, and you'd be pretty ignorant to disagree. Really, you've made some of the best sequels of all time. Avatar. I do agree. I actually said the same thing. I said even though it's like obviously remastered to 4K, obviously the base, like the original movie also has to just look good, because otherwise, like, you see the films like E.T. and Terminator obviously re-rendered to 4K and they still look the same, really, but just brighter, like more brighter tones and things like that. But it's just, I don't think any films even, it's probably still the best looking film I've ever seen. And still quite possibly, I just think it's such a special movie, and I think it's so overhated. Like, I actually thought about it. A lot of people, whether it's online on Twitter or people I know, talk about how this film has no fan base and how this film won't have money. Now, it's come out that this film made like 15 million on 4 days just on re-releases. And we went to a screening, which was pretty packed, and we saw the most recent Uncharted film in IMAX almost the first day, same time session, and there was about 30 people in there, and this had like hundreds. I actually think the fans who I know just love this film, and they just aren't like toxic fuckwits, really. Like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings fans, like all these fans that are just like really into this nerd subculture, which I'm all for it. I love Star Wars, I love Lord of the Rings, but like you've just got such a toxic fan base that like they just, ridicule their own brand, like they ridicule their own movies, they ridicule all that. And it's like, I think this film's just got a fan base that just love it and just don't care. They don't have like this heavy online presence where they're like, no, fucking Avatar's the best movie ever. And I've like the amount of money this film's made just purely off 4 days of re-release and the amount of like great reactions I've seen online. That's what I've come to the conclusion of. I just think it's just got a fan base that just love film.
Oh yeah.
One thing I can't fathom is how 3D has died. After I've watched this film, there like realistically 3D is a dying format. This film came out and started that whole 3D trend, but I think it's more so based on obviously what films actually did as well since. Films have went for the really phony 3D thing where it's like, you know, Thor throwing a hammer and it comes at you and it comes at the screen and you're like, oh, cool. Whereas this film's 3D is just so different. All it focuses on, nothing really comes at you at all. All it's focused on is adding layers and depth into every single shot to make the world just seem so real. And I think, I actually said this to Daniel, I don't think any films actually even come close to it in terms of actually world building. You've got obviously, even though I just talked about how toxic their fan bases are, like you know, Harry Potter and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings obviously had great world building, but after one film, I don't know anyone who wouldn't sit there and be like, I want to live on Pandora. Apart from the fact they die within 3 hours. But anyway.
I'd love to be a blue monkey.
Blue monkey, yeah, what they call them, yeah. And one thing I have noticed, obviously, when this film originally came out, I would have been 13 years old. It's actually quite like a political movie. Like really focused on obviously like colonizations and environmentalism and things like that. Race, indigenous.
Yep.
It's actually, and I think it does it so well in terms of telling that story. And I am really upset because we ended up watching the film and only found out later on Twitter that there was footage to the second one in the credits, which we missed. But at the same time, I'm also kind of happy I didn't, because then I can go in fresh as a daisy and blind as a bat into the second one and just watch it and enjoy it, because I am so excited. And I think it'll be probably the best looking film of all time. I've already seen like some screenshots from the footage. I know I can't, like, it's been copyrighted and things like that, so I can't see it. But I love this film, and it still is one of my just favorite films of all time. This film, I remember when I saw it originally, was one film, apart from Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, which I love, like this got me into film heavily and filmmaking. It's got such a special place in my heart, and watching it, I haven't seen it in cinemas since that day, and I just like watched it, and the whole time I just had like a grin on my face. I think it's, anyone who hates it can just grow the fuck up, I'll be honest. It's such a good and well-made movie, and I don't think anything in terms of craft and like just has really come close since, and it just holds up so well, which is ridiculous, because you watch, you know, Thor Love and Thunder, and it had a floating little fucking fine reel head or whatever that looked like dog shit, and this film's 13 years old, and it's just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So unfortunately, it's not out anymore, I think, in cinemas. It was only a weekend, and I think Disney did also take it down from their Disney Plus for people to go watch it. But I do recommend, if you own it, please watch it before, you know, the new one, or even watch it again just to get a different, you know, opinion on it if you remember not liking it. I couldn't recommend it enough. But other than that, did you have anything kind of touch on other than...
You make great points with like the 3D. I reckon everyone does everything for gimmick now, and we talked about that a lot after the film, and it used 3D not to, like, you know, emphasize all these like kind of like cool gimmicky stuff. It was to build depth within that universe. The stuff that was like really emphasized throughout the film was all the particles. Like anytime they were doing anything, the stuff was floating around them. It felt like it was floating around like you.
Even the little thing like when he's filming the vlogs, which he has to do, and it's got his face here, and you can actually see the text in front of him.
Yeah.
Sorry if I was covering my mic there. You can actually see the text in front of him, and it's just like it adds that layer of depth and realism that you just don't get nowadays in 3D films. And I think studios very much went for that monetary value because it is a few extra dollars and they might make more money. But I know the second one's coming out in 3D and also high frame rate, which I'm really keen to see, the 48 FPS. I know they did it in Hobbit, but I don't think they did it well because it was very, like, there wasn't practicality. I don't think the CGI was great, whereas I can sit here and fully trust Jimmy Cameron. So I'll be there first day trying to get tickets. I'm sure it'll fucking sell out pretty heavily. But other than that, I guess that's kind of all I have to really touch on.
No, it's good.
I know we'll be back next week. I think next week we've got the film Speak, the horror film coming. Smile, sorry, the horror film coming out where it looks interesting, and then there's See How They Run, which is a classic whodunit, murder mystery film. So, other than that, that's kind of all we have to touch on this week. This is Bad Movie Reviews, Ben and Daniel. You can catch us every week on all major podcasting platforms and, of course, visually on YouTube. But other than that, we'll catch you and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Steve, guys.